It's the early morning hours off the U.S. East Coast, and a big passenger ship glides quietly through a murky, all-engulfing fog. Lit from stem to stern like a floating town, the liner has a single funnel, which bell-tropes its way ahead blindly. But then from out of nowhere comes the chisel-like bow of another ship. It bears down with unstoppable momentum out of the mist, and then comes a shuddering blow. The stranger has buried its bow deep inside the hull of the big passenger ship, opening its side up to the ocean. Water surges in. The passenger ship wallows. A timer's been started, and soon this big liner will be in its grave on the bottom. When we think of the White Star Line and sinking ships, one name springs immediately to mind: Titanic. After that, of course, Britannic is probably the most infamous of the White Star Line's lost liners, despite the fact she sank as a hospital ship. But in the early morning hours of the 23rd of January 1909, 2 months before Titanic's keel was even laid down, the White Star Line's RMS Republic was struck by the Lloyd Italiano liner SS Florida in a dense fog off the coast of Massachusetts. By the evening of the 24th, Republic had slipped below the inky waters of the coast of Nantucket Island to rest in some 270 feet of water. But despite carrying 461 passengers and 297 crew, only 3 of the souls aboard Republic died as a result of the collision. At the time of her loss, the 14,400 gross registered ton liner was the largest to ever sink, and the well-coordinated response from other ships in her immediate vicinity cemented the idea that the busy shipping lanes of the North Atlantic would be crowded with enough vessels to ferry passengers and crew from a sinking ship to safety with ease. This confidence was proven to be fatally flawed on the evening of April 15, 1912, when RMS Titanic sank into the icy waters of the North Atlantic with no ships close enough to rescue all of her passengers. Beyond that, Republic's sinking has inspired treasure hunters, tempted by the spoils of lost riches in the ship's cargo holds. From a U.S. Navy payroll intended for those serving in Gibraltar, to millions of dollars worth of gold for the Russian Tsar, stories of billions of dollars worth of treasure hidden in the decaying hull of the Republic range from the plausible to the fanciful. Even without the prospect of glittering millions, the sinking of RMS Republic was one of the most dramatic maritime disasters of the Edwardian Age, one from which all the wrong lessons were learned. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your friend Mike Brady from Ocean Liner Designs, and this is the dynamic RMS Republic. The sinking of the RMS Republic is one of the most important yet least remembered disasters in maritime history. Not because of how many lives were lost, but because of how many were saved and the dangerous lessons the world learned from it. In many ways, Republic's story paved the way for Titanic's tragedy. Birth of a liner. The ship that would become RMS Republic began life as the SS Columbus, built by Harland and Wolff, the same legendary shipyard that would later construct Titanic. She was launched in September 1903 for the Dominion Line, which, like White Star Line, belonged to J.P. Morgan's International Mercantile Company. After only 2 voyages, Columbus was transferred to White Star Line and renamed Republic. She was designed as the flagship of the Liverpool-Boston route. Specifications: 15,400 gross tons, 570 feet long, 68 feet beam, 5 passenger decks, twin screws powered by quadruple expansion steam engines, 12 watertight compartments, double bottom. For her era, she was considered exceptionally safe. By 1909, she was fitted with a brand new Marconi wireless system, a revolutionary technology that would soon make history. Ship, the millionaire ship. Republic became famous as the millionaire ship. It carried 280 first class, 250 second class, 2,300 third class, 300 crew. Total souls, roughly 2,830. Her first-class spaces rivaled luxury hotels featuring rich woodwork, Elegant staterooms, a magnificent dining saloon crowned with a stained glass dome. Even second and third class enjoyed accommodations far beyond what most liners offered. Yet, despite her size, Republic carried only 16 lifeboats, nowhere near enough for everyone aboard. At the time, this was considered normal. The belief was simple. A damaged ship would stay afloat long enough for nearby vessels to ferry passengers to safety. Republic would soon put that belief to the test. The final voyage begins. On January 22, 1909, Republic departed New York for the Mediterranean. Its itinerary: Azores, Madeira, Genoa, Naples. Only 450 passengers were aboard, mostly wealthy Americans escaping winter and European migrants returning home. The weather that day was mild, 11 degrees Celsius or 53 degrees Fahrenheit, unusually warm for January in New York. At the helm stood Captain Inman Sealby, a seasoned White Star commander with decades of experience. Nothing suggested that within hours his ship would be fighting for survival. The other ship, SS Florida. At the same time, the Italian liner SS Florida was approaching New York from Italy. Florida was much smaller, 5,018 tons, 380 feet long, primarily a migrant ship. Her passengers were mostly survivors of the catastrophic Messina earthquake, which had killed 80,000 people only weeks earlier. They believed their suffering was finally behind them. They were wrong. Collision, 5:47 a.m. Off the coast of Nantucket, both ships entered dense fog. Florida slowed. Republic, keeping schedule, reduced speed only slightly. Whistles echoed blindly through the mist. At 5:47 a.m., Republic's bridge heard Florida's whistle, dangerously close. Sealby ordered full astern, hard to port. It was too late. Florida's bow struck Republic's port side, slicing through her steel hull from below the waterline to the upper deck. 2 Republic passengers were killed instantly. 3 Florida crewmen died. Republic's engine room flooded. Its boilers were extinguished. It lost all power. She was now a crippled giant, adrift in fog. A hero awakens. Jack Binns. Marconi operator Jack Binns was thrown from his bunk by the impact. The ship's power was gone. His cabin was damaged. Water poured through the decks. Binns waded through freezing water to retrieve emergency batteries and restored his wireless set. At 6 a.m., his signal reached land. CQD, distress. The first great wireless rescue in history had begun. By the time Jack Binns's distress signal, CQD, tore through the foggy Atlantic, the RMS Republic was already dying. Her engine room was flooded. Her boilers were extinguished. She had no power, no steering, no lights, and was drifting helplessly in one of the busiest shipping lanes on Earth. But she was still afloat, and that fact would save more than 1,500 lives. On shore, Marconi operators relayed the Republic's call for help. At sea, ships of every nation altered course. Among them, RMS Baltic, one of the largest ships in the world. Enter the giant, RMS Baltic. Baltic was more than 60 miles away when her wireless operator intercepted the distress signal. Captain J.B. Ranson, a veteran White Star commander, immediately ordered a course change. For 12 exhausting hours, Baltic crept through the fog, zigzagging blindly, guided only by intermittent wireless signals from Jack Binns aboard Republic. Passengers aboard Baltic had no idea they were steaming into one of the greatest rescue operations in maritime history. The first evacuation. Meanwhile, the damaged SS Florida returned to Republic's side. Although her bow was crushed and bent downward, Florida was still seaworthy. Captain Sealby made the decision. All Republic passengers would be transferred to Florida immediately. Stewards carried out the evacuation with remarkable discipline. Within hours, hundreds of frightened passengers crowded Florida's decks, wealthy tourists, immigrant families, children, and crew. Florida now rode dangerously low in the water. She could not carry them much farther. Nightfall, the impossible task. By evening, Baltic finally emerged from the fog. Now came the most dangerous phase of the rescue. Over 1,600 people had to be transferred by small wooden lifeboats in darkness through choppy seas between two moving ships nearly a mile apart. Each boat could carry only 10 passengers at a time. Waves tossed the boats violently as crews rowed back and forth through the night. Searchlights swept the water. Fog swallowed the horizon. Children cried. Women prayed. Men clung to railings. And still the transfer continued. By dawn on January 24th, hundreds were still aboard Florida. Finally, by 10 a.m., the last passengers were transferred to Baltic. Every soul from Republic and Florida was now safe. The fate of the Republic. Baltic turned back toward New York. Florida limped behind her, badly wounded but alive. Only Republic remained, alone, powerless, slowly sinking. Fog lifted enough for rescuers to find her again. The U.S. revenue cutter Gresham, the Coast Guard vessel Seneca, and the steamer Fessia attempted the impossible to tow the massive liner toward shallow water near Nantucket. For hours they fought the ocean. Water climbed Republic's decks. Bulkheads failed. The sea poured into her grand salons and staterooms. At 8:30 p.m., the decision was made. The ship could not be saved. Captain Sealby and a skeleton crew remained aboard until the final moments. Then, slowly, the Republic's bow rose from the Atlantic. She slipped beneath the waves, stern first, after surviving nearly 40 hours since the collision. She was, at that moment, the largest ship ever lost at sea. On January 26, 1909, New York Harbor fell silent. The battered SS Florida limped in first, flags at half-mast, her bow grotesquely crushed. She carried the weight of 6 dead and the memory of a night the ocean nearly claimed them all. Behind her came RMS Baltic, now carrying every surviving passenger and crew member from both ships. Crowds gathered by the thousands. Families searched faces. Mothers wept. Children were lifted high to spot familiar figures among the living. Against impossible odds, over 1,500 lives had been saved. The press declared the disaster a miracle. The age of technology, they said, had mastered the sea. They were wrong. Heroes of the Republic. Captain Inman Sealby arrived to thunderous applause. Newspapers described him as the embodiment of courage, a commander who remained aboard his dying ship until the very end. He would later leave the White Star Line and become a maritime lawyer. But the man most celebrated was Jack Binns, the 24-year-old wireless operator. The world called him CQD Binns. He was hailed as the savior of thousands. Films were made about him. Newspapers followed his every move. Privately, he was shattered. He would later say he cried at the thought of ever going to sea again. The wrong lessons. No formal inquiry was ever held. Only 6 people had died. The system, it seemed, had worked. Shipping companies concluded wireless could summon help, ships would stay afloat long enough, lifeboats only needed to ferry passengers to rescuers. This belief spread throughout the industry. It directly influenced the design and safety policies of the next generation of liners, including one very famous ship. Enter the Titanic. When RMS Titanic sailed in 1912, she carried more lifeboats than required by law. But the law itself was based on tonnage, not people. Titanic could carry 3,500 souls. Her boats held 1,178. Why? because Republic had shown that rescue ships would always arrive in time. They didn't. The night the illusion died. On April 14, 1912, Titanic struck an iceberg. A coal strike had emptied the Atlantic of ships. No nearby vessel arrived in time. Wireless called into the darkness. No one came. 1,500 people died. The ocean reminded the world of its power. The true legacy of Republic. The sinking of Republic was a triumph of courage, technology, and discipline, but it planted a fatal confidence that technology could always save us. Sometimes it cannot. For more than 70 years, the final resting place of RMS Republic remained unknown. She had vanished into the Atlantic on January 24, 1909, taking with her the memories of her last voyage and rumors that would not die. Then, in 1981, explorer and treasure hunter Martin Byerly finally found her. The wreck lay in 270 feet of water, about 50 miles south of Nantucket. She was broken, scattered, and silent, but unmistakable. The Great White Star liner had been found at last. The treasure myth. Almost immediately, whispers turned into legends. Gold. Some believed Republic carried a massive shipment of American gold coins bound for Europe, possibly worth billions today. Expeditions followed, dives were made, artifacts were recovered, but no gold was ever found. Still, the myth persisted. Decades later, the History Channel would revive the story with Billion Dollar Wreck. Once again, cameras rolled, crews descended, and the ocean kept your secrets. The final irony. Florida survived the collision, but fate was not finished with her. In 1917, she collided with another Italian liner, SS Caprera, and sank. Her wreck has never been found. Republic's resting place is known. Florida's remains a mystery. What Republic left behind? The sinking of RMS Republic reshaped maritime history. Her rescue proved the power of wireless communication. Her loss exposed the dangerous flaws of lifeboat laws. Her legacy haunted Titanic. But above all, her story stands as a warning. Technology is a tool, not a guarantee. The sea always has the final word.